Two gentlemen were playing golf. They decided that they'd make it a little bit more fun, and they'd play for money. 5 rand. 5 rand for the winner. They come to the third hole. The one guy hits his ball and goes into the rough. So he turns to his friend and he says, do me a favor. Help me look for my ball. He goes searching back and forth, back and forth. They can't find it. This fellow is so desperate to win that while the other guy is not watching, he takes out a ball from his pocket and drops it and says, "Oh, look, I found it." His friend turns around very distressed and he says, after all this cheat, you would lie, and for a mere 5 rand? I'm so disappointed. So the guy said, "What are you talking about? I'm not cheating, I'm not lying, I found the ball right here." He says, "And a liar as well. How could you have found the ball when I've had my foot on it the whole time?" The question of integrity and honor, of doing the right thing, is that which motivates us in every aspect of life, and it's a demand and a requirement which the Torah has for each and every one of us. It's the idea of appreciation, recognizing how God has been good to us, and our responsibilities and our duties to other. The idea of integrity, the idea of gratitude, the idea of shared responsibility to a fellow. In this week's parasha we have the principle that many people struggle with, and that is the prohibition against lending a fellow money on interest. And many people would balk at this particular idea. After all, I worked hard for the money. Instead of it sitting in the bank and making interest, I'm now going to lend it to this individual. Surely I'm entitled to make something out of it. After all, there's nothing for nothing. Why should this person receive this loan totally interest-free without any overheads, when I worked so hard to make this money? And therefore I'm entitled to see some type of a return on it. Well, to give us a little bit of a better clarity, we need to understand, or perhaps look at it from a slightly different perspective. Indeed, we do recognize that this prohibition against charging interest is perhaps one of the more difficult, certainly for people in business, to be able to come to terms with. Rabbis tell us that perhaps a businessman would turn around and say that clearly Moshe was no businessman. After all, what business individual, money-minded man, would ever turn around and say, "I'll lend you money without interest"? It's the easiest money. It's the easiest way of making something out of the money that we've already made. So perhaps if we look at it slightly from a different vantage point, we will understand the Torah's perspective, and hopefully that too will give us not only an insight in this regard, but also an insight into our morality and our duty to a fellow person. Imagine someone came over and said, "You know what? I've got a gift for you. The gift is 10 million rand. Do with it as you wish. Buy what you want. It's yours. No strings attached, except for one. And the one string that I do attach to it is that I request that if somebody should come and ask you for financial assistance, should someone come and ask for aid, for a loan, that you grant it to him unquestioningly, and that you do so on the proviso that you don't ask for any interest. And that's the only condition I make. It's the only request that I have. If you want to have this 10 million rand, a simple request, that in the event that somebody needs your help, do it with an open heart and don't ask for anything in return." Could you imagine? Could you imagine an individual who wouldn't say, "By all means, I'd be delighted to accept your generosity and to accede to your request. No interest." Everybody would do it without blinking an eyelid. The same thing is true in the context of what the Torah is telling us. It's important for all of us to appreciate and to realize that whatever we have, however meager it might be, or however luscious and generous it might be, no matter how hard we seem to have worked to achieve that, at the end of the day, it all comes from God. Whether a person is successful or not is not only dependent upon the effort that a person puts in, but indeed upon God's blessing. There are people who work very hard, but unfortunately never make a financial success. Noble individual, righteous people. But in the context of what unfortunately society views as important, of tremendous wealth, people don't necessarily make it. And other individuals who also work hard, perhaps not even as hard as this person who wasn't successful. Somehow or other God has smiled upon them. Everything they touch, as they say, turns to gold. Every business activity they're involved with is successful. The losses are minimal. And as time progresses, they amass a tremendous wealth. The difference is not necessarily in the amount of work that they put in, but in God's blessing. And we need to appreciate, we need to realize that whatever we have, from large to small, is not only our doing, but it is to a very large degree God's blessing. To be sure, a person can't sit back and say, listen, if God wants me to have, He'll give me. We have to do our part in order to enable God to provide us with that we require. But at the end of the day, whether we receive it in abundance or, God forbid, the opposite, is not dependent upon the effort we put in, but upon the blessing of God. And therefore God gives this individual this amount of money, whatever it might be. Totally no strings attached. It's your money to do with as you wish, to enjoy life to the fullest, to buy whatever you will, but one condition, one small condition. When a fellow Jew comes and needs assistance, they're in difficult times, the condition for you having that money is that you'll be willing to come and to assist. And that you'll assist in a manner that will not place a burden on the individual, but rather will give him the ability to get onto his feet and the knowledge that with time he'll be able to pay it back, not having to lose money and to pay interest. And that is the only condition that God places upon us when He gives us the blessing of wealth. And perhaps if we have this kind of a perspective and an attitude and appreciation that everything that we have comes from God, and that we are very fortunate, as the saying goes, there by the grace of God goes I, that with God's blessing we're able to have and to put food on the table, and without God's blessing a person can work tirelessly but never make a living. So we have to appreciate what we have, whence it comes, and the one request that God has of us when He gives us that blessing. Keep in mind the less fortunate. Keep in mind the needy. Take care of their needs. Look after them, and then the money that He gives to us as a gift, we're more than welcome to keep. We're more than welcome to use, as long as we keep to the one and only condition that God places upon that. Good Shabbos.